Doing well. Glad to be here. Looking forward to this.
Very good. Let me go ahead and officially sit down with our group, and then we'll get it started. All right, y'all, we're very excited about this group, and we're going to go in a couple different directions, but let's start with some of the buzz of sports media, the sports media industry. A lot of new trends, a lot of positivity, a lot of things to be excited about. So really, with the current state of your respective roles in industry and the rise of sports media, and it's as present as ever before, what really excites you about the current trends of the current state of sports media in general? Anybody who wants to chime in first? Tyler? Put you on the spot.
I made eye contact with you. I knew that was a mistake. I think one of the things that's exciting, and I think you learn as you go on further from like your education, is that things are always changing. And I think at first it can be daunting, it can be scary, especially if you're like 19, 20, 21. But as you go further into your career, there's always kind of an opportunity to learn. And I think that's even more so the case now. From when I was here, as Chad said, I spent a lot of nights in the Reveille, largely geared toward a print newspaper. But now, with what I do, the writing, there's podcasts involved, there's data visualizations, there's newsletters, as my colleague here and now, Chris Branch, can attest to. There's so many different avenues and different ways to kind of distribute news, information, that you're always kind of learning. And I think that's happening even more now, so that's really exciting that there's always going to be an opportunity for yourself, personal growth and professional too. Did I do okay? Did I win?
You did great. That's a great way to kick us off. Caroline, what have you seen in recent years, or what are you excited about as we move forward?
I think one of the massive changes in media now is it used to feel maybe very stoic, maybe very cold, that there was such a formula to how you covered sports teams, to how you may have covered a news story. And you still need to follow that formula to a certain extent. But I feel like now there is so much more room for interpretation. There's so much more room for being so much more creative, that you don't have to just present one story in a certain way. It's not just A plus B equals C. You can do so many different things. You can try different things. So I do a podcast, a college football podcast for Yahoo Sports. And every morning we just think, like, what could be fun to talk about today? Like, we're covering sports. It's fun. It should be fun. So let's have fun with it. So I think now that everybody has an opportunity to have a podcast or to have a voice into media, how do you differentiate yourself? And I think in trying to differentiate ourselves as media members, we can be creative and we can show off different ways that you can cover a game or a story and not just following a certain formula. So I like the changing creativity in the industry has been very fun.
Absolutely. Kennedi, you've had quite a journey there in Dallas with the Rangers the last couple of years. With the success and that team winning the World Series a year ago, what changed for you all? Was there even more demand for unique content and something that stands out?
Yeah, I think something as a beat reporter that has stood out these last few years, you mentioned The Athletic has a newsletter. We started a beat newsletter. All 30 of our beats at MLB.com do a twice weekly newsletter that's on top of your daily coverage, on top of your regular beat reporter duties, injury updates, daily updates, speaking to the manager every day, a twice weekly newsletter on top of that. We have, like Caroline said, a creativity to do whatever we really want with those newsletters. So it could be a feature, it could be a statistical analysis. Statistics are a huge thing in baseball, obviously, with StatCast data and FanGraphs and all of these things. That there are a lot of avenues that you can kind of choose in baseball, and that's one of the most fun things about what we've been able to do with these newsletters. I'm more of a feature writer. I don't really love all of the fancy statistics, so I specifically will try to do more featurey things, show the personality of these players. But one of our beat reporters he was a math major in college, and he likes to dive deeper into those statistics, underlying things in baseball. So that's a lot of different fun avenues that we're able to kind of undertake with these newsletters. That's a new thing, I guess, these last few years of, journalism.
Thank you very much. Let me go to Mr. McFarland for a second. Anthony, if you want to walk us through, obviously working with ESPN and the mega company and wearing different hats over the years, what have you seen that's really changed their priorities from the company, and what's the messaging to y'all as the broadcasters, as the on-air analyst, obviously having that passion and that expertise that you bring to the company, and it shows, but what's their message to you as to these are our changing goals here in 2024?
Well, I think it's changed from the standpoint of, if you go back a decade ago, everything was a part of the big cable bundle with ESPN. And if you got the cable, you got ESPN, and you got all of our channels. I think things have changed now. People are cutting the cord. Cable subscribers have gone down. And I think what everyone is saying is things have become so much more individualized. And if you're able to be creative and you're able to gather a story or create content, then you can take that content to consumer. And I think when you look at what ESPN is doing in the next 5 years, we're going to be direct to consumer. So no longer are we going to be a part of a bundle. We'll be just like Netflix or Hulu. It'll be an app. You touch the big E button and ESPN will pop up. And I think that's where the sports media and broadcasting things are going. The quicker you can create it and the quicker you can get it to the consumer, the better off you'll be. And I think there's so many more avenues now to do that with all the different social media platforms, all the different apps, all the different ways to create content. You literally can be your own producer, your own creator, your own editor, especially if you have the passion to do it, because you can create a story and get it across the world with the click of a button. And I think that's where it's so different than when I started in this business, because you kind of had to be a part of a company. You had to be a part of a big name brand for people to pay attention to you. Now, all you need is a name, a username, and a device, and you click a button. And if your content becomes creative and becomes something that people want to follow and pay attention to, you can gather a following rather quickly. So it's a more advantageous world right now for people in our industry. I'm kind of envious now because I didn't come up in this time, and things are so much more plentiful for you guys to be able to be creative, and you can get to where we are a lot faster now.
A lot of opportunity. Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. McFarland. For Sharief and Madeline, local television is the heart of community in terms of broadcast, along with local radio as well. But that business has completely changed in recent years, too. It used to be appointment viewing, right? Your evening news, your morning newscast. And now, how has your workflow changed in terms of the demands, the content creation throughout the day? Madeline?
Yeah, I think with obviously the invention of social media years ago, like you mentioned, it used to be, everyone tuned into the 5 o'clock news, not knowing what had gone on before at that point. But now with social media, people there's such a high demand for news at every waking hour. So you always even if it's, like we go off the air at 6 o'clock at night. Well, last night at 6:10, Alvin Kamara, his contract extension news broke. So, we're immediately trying to get stuff out on the website, get stuff out on social media. And I think too, what's cool is it gives you just so many different ways to get news out. Typically in a news story on broadcast, you have a minute 30 to 2 minutes to really put a full story together. But now with social media, you can kind of expand that a little bit. And two, with our station, we're doing more podcasts. And podcasts can be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. So that gives us really time to expand on a story, what you can't fit into a minute 30 piece. So social media, podcasting, that has really given us an avenue and a chance to kind of just expand on stories, give in to kind of the demand that people have for sports in New Orleans, because it is crazy. If you're from around here, even being in Baton Rouge, it's very similar. People just want to know what's going on at all times. With the Saints, Pelicans, LSU, Tulane, every school in New Orleans. So it is just, there's such a demand for it, and social media podcast really gives us kind of that platform to give people as much content as they can kind of take in.
And speaking of New Orleans, it's game day, y'all. The Pelicans, NBA season opener tonight. So a lot of content will be produced in the next few hours. Mr. Ishaq, what have you observed? Because you've seen a lot of changes over the last 2 decades.
Calling me old. Thank you. Yes, it has changed.
Experience.
Yes, it's changed a lot from the time we were in Hodges Hall, here at LSU, to where it is now. We used to edit on beta tapes.
Tape to tape.
Tape to tape. I'm sure. All right, Cindy, you know what tape to tape is. Things are like this. Now you're editing on HD cards at a little B squares, and everything is great with this technology. Moves much quicker. Not so much back in the day. It was much more difficult whenever we were coming up through school and going through the TV ranks. But yeah, I think a lot of things have changed because of social media, technology. Back in the day, it used to be 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock news. Now it's morning news for 7 hours. Then it's the noon to 1. Then it's 4 to 5:30. Then it's 6 to 6:30. Then it's 10 to 10:30. It's just constant news. It's a never-ending cycle where you have something always going on. Like Madeline said, Alvin Kamara's extension breaks right around the 6 o'clock news. Have to find a way to sneak that into your sportscast. Obviously, you have to lead off with something big like that. It's just never-ending things that you always have to pay attention to. Podcasts, social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I mean, all those things weren't around back in the day whenever we started here at LSU, and now that's become, where a lot of people get their main source of information these days on top of just watching TV in general. And like Booger was talking about, Booger said, hey, the apps are big now. It's going straight to consumers. Like, when I started at WDSU, I didn't think we could watch our newscast through our WDSU app. Now we can. You click on the app and you can watch what we just had or watch it live whenever it's live. And that's just kind of blows my mind today, like 20 years later since I was here at LSU, that you can actually do all these things. You don't really have to watch TV, but a lot of people in New Orleans still are in demand for the news. News down there is just a different beast. It's like they love their news in New Orleans. Saints, Pelicans, LSU, Tulane, everything. That they're always tuning in. It's a good market for like local TV, and it just continues to be very strong down there.
With that growing demand for constant information and content 24/7 comes the challenge of standing out, right, in a saturated market at times, respective to all of our industries. How do you present yourself with the idea of how do I make my mark? How do I stand out in what can be a very saturated market? Caroline, do you want to lead us off?
Yeah, I think it's two big things, and standing out is the biggest thing. Once you get into your career and you spend a few years in professional media, that's your biggest challenge, is how do I stand out? The first thing is personality, that you should feel empowered and comfortable to let your personality shine through, because anybody can write an article about a football game, anybody can talk about a football game, but what makes you specifically different? Just feeling comfortable and confident to be your truest and most authentic self. And I think the second thing that's really important, aside from personality, is topic selection. That anybody can talk about, should Garrett Nussmeier win the Heisman Trophy? Okay, well, let's peel back the layers a little bit. How can I present a story that maybe everyone in Baton Rouge, everyone in America is talking about? And how can I look at it through a different lens? And that's difficult. Like, it takes a lot of practice. It's a muscle that you constantly need to be training, and you constantly need to be pushing yourself to finding a different angle and presenting a story in a really interesting and different way. But when you combine a really good and interesting topic selection with a fun and engaging personality, that is how you differentiate yourself from everybody else.
Very good. Kennedi, I think of the Major League Baseball season, 162 games. Plenty of opportunities for content, but getting out of the template, of the routine of game stories, and really finding something unique. How's that been, that process?
Yeah, I think it's again, 162 games are a lot. You add, 30 spring training games on top of that. You get into the postseason, that's another, 20. So I don't tire of watching baseball. Obviously, it's a great job, and there are much worse jobs than watching baseball every day. But sometimes it is difficult to be able to find those specific topics to be able to write about. What is this? What makes this June 19th matchup with the Reds special from the April 10th matchup with the Astros, or all of those things? I think that's been something that you learn how to deal with every day, focusing on specific plays or specific players, or what made this game so special, even when it's in a sea of 162. So that's been something for me. I think you still learn how to do every day, because you're always going to have a 2-1 loss. That the one run was scored on an infield single, and you have to figure out what to write about that game. Is it a big picture kind of day? How does this affect the big picture of a losing season or a winning season or the division or whatever that may be? It's all about finding what is going to impact the team in whatever that may be. And again, I think I'm learning every day. It wasn't easy, when you're first working on a baseball beat and trying to get into a routine of going to the ballpark quite literally every day. It's different than football, where you game once a week, 3 days a week practice. And yeah, it's a lot. And I think, being coachable and being adaptable is a huge thing. Not just in baseball, but any sports reporting role, and being able to to adapt to any situation that you may kind of be encountered with.
Absolutely. Mr. McFarland, Anthony, this makes me think of when you first started doing some media. If you don't mind sharing, you were talking a lot of hockey, and you were adapting on the fly down in Tampa, really getting your bearings into the media world and showcasing that versatility. But then also, if you could share just what Caroline mentioned about being authentic, right? Showcasing your personality along with your expertise.
Yeah, you mentioned talking about the hockey. I got started doing local radio, and which really was a blessing in disguise because, you get, 12 to 15 minute segments in local radio where you get a chance to kind of stretch your legs out and talk and get comfortable hearing your voice. But you also got to learn about things that I had no clue about it. I grew up in Louisiana, in the northern part of the state. I never knew what hockey was. I never saw it until I got to Florida. And, now after football, I'm thrust into talking about the red line, the blue line, and offsides. And I'm like, yeah, the only offsides I know is when I got a penalty for jumping offside. So I had to learn a lot of things when it came to doing that job. I think overall, the most important thing, or the most important word I could share, is comfort. Comfort in who you are, comfort in your own voice, comfort in your own writing style. You have to be comfortable being you. Because when you're comfortable, you can relax and the authentic you can come out. People often say, be yourself. Well, it's hard to be yourself when you're uncomfortable and when you're nervous. And don't get me wrong, we're all going to be nervous. The first time I was ever on camera, the guy who was the host said, hey, in the first commercial break, he said, hey, I think they want you to look at the camera also. Don't just stare at me for 2.5 minutes. And so, you have to learn things that are automatically going to seem natural years later. Comfort is one. And then the second thing when it comes to just the content, one of my mentors, Mike Greenberg, who's been on air for 30 years, he put it really simple. He said, I'm in the business of interesting. I try to talk about on TV and radio things that are interesting. And if it interests me, then the likelihood is it's going to interest someone else. And so as you're trying to figure out what to do, what to write about, what to talk about, what's going to be my topic on the news or whatever, think about, does it interest you? Is it interesting to you? Is it interesting to someone around you? Because if the answer to those questions are no, then it's probably something you don't need to do. But when people are watching or consuming content, we're consuming things that makes us go, okay, I agree, I disagree, but that's interesting. I didn't know that. Because anybody can pick up a computer and look up stats and info or look up whatever. You have to be able to create content and opinion based on things that are interesting to yourself first, and then they have an opportunity to be interesting to everyone else. So those are the two things I would share. Be comfortable, which will allow you to be yourself, and then be in the business of being interesting in whatever you say or whatever you do.
Absolutely, and that also includes the presentation, right? The production value, the display, the features of it all. Tyler, let's weigh in on, being an editor, being a managerial editor of your peers and making sure that this compelling work, this interesting work is presented in the most compelling way that's, adapted to our current society and quick time frame and also quick attention spans.
Yeah, I got two quick thoughts on what you just talked about, though, because I think it's interesting. Personality, I think that's something that's changed because when I was in school and when a lot of us was in school, you were kind of taught not to have a personality. You were taught to be objective, not let your voice kind of infiltrate what you do. And I think that's sort of been a change that has happened over the past, 10, 15 years. So I think that's really interesting. And talking about writing and standing out, I think from at least my perspective, the COVID pandemic really kind of separated writers from stenographers in a sense, because as Kennedi knows, and I'm sure other people know, availabilities and what the press conferences you were getting, everybody was getting the same thing. It was the same video, everybody was on the same Zoom, everybody was getting the same transcript. And then what people produced from that, you could really tell who was going the extra mile, calling a parent, calling a former coworker, calling another source. I think that helped people stand out more, and now that's more the norm of not just gonna take what the two players on the team saying right off of that. Let me go the extra mile and do that. And I hope that's something that people here are being taught and kind of becomes part of their routine. And I already forgot your question because I wanted to get that out.
We're just transitioning into the presentation of it all.
Yeah.
Obviously, y'all have a template, a certain layout
Right.
that's catchy, that works, and the Athletic has grown exponentially, and it's been impressive. So walk us through just that vision and that execution while managing your colleagues in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky that we have a pretty big platforms to kind of get our content out. Again, not only just the written word, but audio, newsletters, the New York Times, of course, now over the past couple years. I think when you have those conversations with writers, different writers and different producers, content producers have different strengths. And I just don't think it's smart to ever sort of manage everyone the same way, whether it be talking through story ideas, giving constructive feedback. Like, it would be stupid if I looked at all of our writers and kind of treated them the same. So different strengths of different people. Some people are better reporters than they are writers. Some people are great writers, not so great reporters. You try to find opportunities to collaborate. You try to find opportunities to get out the best work because we're all striving for the same goal. We want to produce the best content for the Athletic or for MLB or Yahoo or whatever possible. And so finding that common ground among the conversations with writers, with other editors, I think that's probably a fairly large part of the job from my perspective, even more so than just kind of opening up a story and editing it, which I still do, but you got to do all of it too.
No, that's a great point about collaboration in general, because no one works alone, right? Not in today's society. You can be an influencer or content creator, but you've got your village around you. I'd like for everybody just to kind of weigh in about the village that supports them, whether it is your producer, your editor, your colleague, your photographer along the way. Sharief, I know in TV production, it takes a small village. It really does.
Yeah, I mean, we just recently added Kendall Duncan and Alvin Moore to the sports department, so now we have a village of 4, which makes it a little bit more, a little easier for us to handle situations and being able to cover more things. We added a 30-minute sports show a year ago on Sunday nights, and it's a monster now. We do a lot of things, and I'm happy. I mean, I'm happy that we can continue to do more and more in sports. And yeah, you got producers, you got executive producers, you have photographers. It's not just, us in the sports department. We get a lot of help from news whenever we're putting together Saints on 6 shows, when we have the Saints games on our air on NBC. We recently just had 2 in the span of 10 days, Monday night game in Kansas City. Then we also had the Sean Payton returns game this past Thursday. And it just wasn't just us 4. It's an entire newsroom helping us put together things like the desk, executive producer, like I said, the assistant news director. I mean, you have to know people, too, within the community to get a lot of these stories that you want to get out. We have an analyst. We have former Saints head coach Jim Moore. He's approaching 90 years old. He's still full of fire. He makes great TV. And we have James Hurst, who played offensive line for the Saints. It's always good to have, like, those analysts, too, that can help you fill some time, but also let you in on, the coaching side of things and the player side of things. So it's a massive village at the times just to put together a 30-minute show. Sometimes, we got to go forward to 7:15, and that's a lot of stuff to fill with. But you always try to find a way to make it interesting. And I think, like Tyler said, it all starts with, having good relationships with everybody that works with you inside the building, and a lot of things that happen outside of the building. You have to have good relationships with coaches and players and everyone that, that'll help you get the stories going on air.
Building upon those relationships, not just with the figures you cover, the athletes, the coaches, the fans, but also your own colleagues. Again, just that collaborative process. How key is that, to have that great professional working relationship with editors, with producers, with the team overall?
Yeah, I think absolutely. At MLB.com, we're very blessed to have, one beat reporter for every team. So collaboration really comes in a lot, especially if you think about the trade deadline, free agency. We all communicate with each other for breaking news and things like that. So if we hear around the trade deadline that, last year the Rangers traded for Jordan Montgomery to the Cardinals, me and our Cardinals reporter, John Denton, were both hearing similar things about who's included in this package, what the Cardinals wanted versus what they got, and things like that. And I think that's, again, at MLB.com and at a place like The Athletic as well, where you have a beat reporter for so many different teams, that collaboration is really possible for things like that. And especially, again, we're in the middle of the World Series right now, or coming up. You have your 2 beat reporters on each team, but you also have, I helped out on the ALDS this year with the Cleveland and Detroit. So I went out to Cleveland, and I went out to Detroit and just helped out. jumped in all the scrums, write an extra story here or there that goes on the Cleveland website. That's, it's not the Rangers, it's not Rangers.com, but that's just a part of the collaboration. I'm helping out, do whatever people are needing from me, and then also whatever I need, people are helping me as well. And I think that's something that makes MLB.com so unique in this, media landscape, is because, the Dallas Morning News has just people covering the Rangers at the Dallas Morning News, not, somebody with the Astros and Mariners and everybody else across the league. So this collaboration is something that's, huge for pretty much everything that we do every day, getting extra quotes from the other side in the other locker room. For something that may happen in the middle of the game, say there's a fight, bench is clear, things like that. It's good to have the information from both sides that, we all work together to do that every day. Yeah.
And a lot of our panelists may work for multiple companies in a sense. Caroline, I'm thinking of working for Yahoo Sports, but also for SiriusXM, and wearing different hats and working with different production teams along the way, just trying to balance that flow, and just your take on that group collaboration.
Yeah, it's everything. I mean, like Sharief and Kennedi said, just your day-to-day, sometimes you just need help. But also sometimes you need people to be a sounding board. And that's something that a SiriusXM producer or a podcast producer at Yahoo, they probably hate to see my name pop up on their phone, because I'm constantly peppering them with questions of which piece of sound do you think is more impactful from a coach, and what's going to land better with the audience. Is this topic interesting to you or not? So using those people in your network, and in different ways, they wear different hats, but using them to ask questions and to be kind of the representation of the audience. And I think just even beyond the day-to-day, using your connections and your people, asking them for feedback, sending them, your minute-and-a-half newscast, or sending them the podcast or an article and saying, can you read this? Can you look at this? Tell me what you like, tell me what you didn't like. Using your connections, hey, I see that you work at MLB.com. I would love to get a job there. Can you tell me how your experience has been, or maybe be a liaison and an advocate for me going through the interview process? Every opportunity that I've gotten professionally has been because of somebody that I know, or somebody has championed for me, and somebody said, yes, I know Caroline and I can vouch for her character. So using your connections, not just in the day-to-day, not just as everyday help, but also in advancing your career and making you better, having those people in your corner is vital, and it's gotten me everywhere I've gone.
I was going to say, I think that village starts now, too.
Yeah.
It's not something we keep going back to it, but Chris, who's going to be on the panel later, this is the third place that Chris and I have worked together, including the Reveille, and then in the Northeast and now together. And that village, that trust that Caroline talked about, it's with your colleagues that you kind of see on a day-to-day basis, producers, editors, and stuff. But I also know that if I need to have a frank conversation with someone, I can talk to Chris and say, all right, am I thinking about this the wrong way? Am I looking at this the wrong way? And he can do the same with me. And because we've known each other for so long, we know that you're going to, get a true answer, or that you may not like it, but you're going to get some honesty because of that relationship that's been built. So just that village probably has already started for a lot of you, but it's the media industry, as vast as it is, it's not that big. There are always a few degrees of separation between people. So just keep that in mind, that you want to kind of cultivate that village now. So. Absolutely.
Let me go back to Mr. Booger McFarland. Booger, do you want to walk us through when you were approached with the idea of Monday Night Football, the iconic institution, showcasing that versatility, and being the first on-field analyst for Monday Night Football, embracing new roles based on not only the knowledge and expertise that you showcased, but those professional relationships and being able to handle yourself in that really prestige environment?
Yeah, it was one of those things that, you talk about trusting and leaning on the people and building the relationships. Anytime you take a step into the unknown, you better trust the people that are around you, the people that are kind of creating these different paths and different avenues. And, for me, having been at the company at that time, I had been 5 or 6 years I had been at ESPN, starting from the SEC network, working my way up, and you get an opportunity to be a part of Monday Night Football in a new role. Something that you've never done. Yeah, I had to trust the creative people to say, okay, this is going to be something that we've never done, but we think it'll be new. We think it'll be creative. We think the fans will like it, and you'll be able to bring a different perspective. So to be able to trust and lean on people that have been in production for 15, 20 years, people that have been working TV longer than I've been in this business, is something that Even in that situation where the outcome wasn't, I guess, as plentiful as we thought, I still had to trust them to say, okay, you guys have done television and you guys have created content for a number of years. You think this will work, so we'll give it an opportunity and give it a try. And I think that's the one thing I learned, or I've learned over the years, is when you trust the production people, more times than not, they have a good idea. Oftentimes, we as the people who are on the camera, we see things a certain way, whereas the producers and directors, they'll have more of a macro approach. And I think that can be a very unique perspective. And then the last thing I'll add to this is when you talk about the different roles and the people that kind of help make up the village of a TV show, a podcast, or whatever, as an analyst, I've seen this over the last decade, is that my role or my ability to grow is kind of boxed in. Yeah, there are a lot of very nice jobs. There are a lot of jobs that get a lot of notoriety and a lot of prominence because you see my face on a podcast, you see my face on a TV, or you hear my voice on radio. But when you talk about the people that are really running the company, the people that run ESPN, I'll give you a prime example. My former boss started as a PA at ESPN. And a PA is a production assistant, basically akin to a graduate assistant. You're not making any money, you're making copies, blah, 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 blah. I mean, you're doing the thankless work. She took that from being a PA to the vice president of production, which basically means she's in charge of everything you see on television. And so the upward mobility is far greater for people who are not the athletes or not the analysts than it is for people who are working their way into the business and the people that are behind the camera or behind the desk. And so I've always, not necessarily been envious, but I've always thought that there's a unique opportunity for people who aren't the athletes, because people always look at us, the people that are on the camera, that are putting the nice makeup on and lipstick, and we're smiling and we're looking good. There's only so much upward mobility we can get, but the people who are actually creating these shows and producing and directing, these are the people that can own the company one day. I'll never own ESPN. I'll never be a VP, but there is so much more upward mobility in the people behind the camera, in my opinion, than it is for people that are in front of the camera.
Thank you very much. Madeline, let's transition a little bit to, y'all hit on it earlier, social media presence. All of our Manship students are actively creating unique content, showcasing that content, checking their social media accounts throughout the day, maybe a little bit too much. How much more of an emphasis now in 2024 have you placed on your overall digital and social media presence than maybe when you were first getting into the industry?
Yeah, it's huge. When I was first in college, social media was big then, but I think it's just grown now, and there's different even avenues of social media that you can kind of put into news. And so how you cover something maybe on Twitter looks a lot different than how you cover something on TikTok. TikTok, as you guys know, has taken off. People even want sports news there as well. And so I'm still kind of learning how to be a journalist on that side of social media. And it's just something that you kind of, as new forms of social media are introduced or invented, like it's something that you just kind of have to learn with and grow with as you go. And so I think, just even social media nowadays, it's like people are on social media constantly. There is constantly a desire and a demand for sports news on social media. And so, as soon as you get updates while you're covering something, you feel like you have to go to Twitter about it. Like, for example, yesterday, we're at Pelicans practice, and we find out that Zion Williamson and DeJounte Murray are both game-time decisions for the season opener. So as soon as Willie Green's done saying that, I'm like on my phone trying to hold the mic as well and like tweet that out, because I know people will want to know that as soon as I know it. So it is just, it's learning how to kind of balance being in the moment, covering what you need to know, but also making sure that that content gets out to your viewers, your audience, as soon as possible. And it's something that's constantly evolving. Obviously, social media now is going to look a lot different in even 10 years, 5 years even. So as social media grows, you kind of have to grow as a journalist and learn what's the best avenue to kind of get content out on that app, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. It all kind of looks a little bit different. So
y'all are all producing content daily, right? Which generates a lot of reaction and interaction. Who wants to walk us through some of the highs or maybe some of the more challenging moments in terms of, responding to your audience in a professional way and having some of those productive conversations on social media.
Not the productive way.
I mean, I'll highlight what was a major news story for us recently. He's now Booger's coworker, but Shams Sharani leaving the Athletic to go to ESPN. That was something that we had to navigate. Okay, if this happens, how do we cover it? We have a responsibility to our audience that they are obviously interested in it, but it's something that is unique because you're just talking about someone's job change. It was one of the most commented stories on our website for good and bad. Sure, it was highlighted in the newsletter, and we just I try not to engage in the comments. I try not to read them a lot for pats on the back or anything. I just kind of try to stay away from it. But obviously, it gets brought to your attention a lot of times, and some writers and some producers, I'm sure, probably pay attention to that a little bit more than others, and you know who those are. And it goes back to kind of what we were talking about. You can't manage everyone the right way. You have someone who does a fantastic story in 100 comments that are just praising it, and one comment that questions it, and there are some people who just focus in on that one comment, and you kind of have to walk them through, hey, that's not indicative of what everybody thinks. We trust your work. We know what the work that you put in to do something like this, and kind of that positive reinforcement, again, I think is a large part of being a manager for sure.
That's so true, but also that negativity is present, right? And it's how you react to it,
right?
Because it's
Hey,
expected. Yeah,
Chad.
go ahead, Booger.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in here because
Please.
listen, 'cause I'm a little different. All right, over the years I've changed, and he's right. To a certain point, you got to be a professional. But this is where it's changed a little bit, because if you get in my mentions and you not in, I'm gonna talk crazy back to you. Like, that's just the reality of where we are. And I think there's certain things that we cannot say. Obviously, a certain line that we cannot cross. But I think that's where the latitude has been given as these platforms have grown and these platforms have become bigger. We don't have to be so robotic. Like, when you're on television, obviously your ability to say things is confined. But as the platforms grow, I think your ability and your latitude to be able to respond back in a certain way, I think is has created more dialogue. Because understand this, fans know, like, I'm human just like you are. If you say something crazy to me, I'm gonna because I engage. I think that's part of what makes you in your personality who you are. You can't just ignore everybody. It sounds good to say, but we all have days where you're like, okay, I'm just gonna get out here and be in my feelings and have a conversation. You want to call me crazy? I'm gonna call you crazy back, and I'm gonna tell you to leave your mom's basement, get out of your underwear, put some clothes on, and go be a productive human in life. Like, that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. And so I think everyone needs to know that it's okay to engage. You can't just engage when everybody says, man, that is a great article, or that is great. Sometimes I engage when people say, man, that is the worst thing I've ever heard. Okay, I'm going to engage with you, and I'm going to tell you why. And at the end of the conversation, we may still disagree, but I think it lends a little credence to you becoming a personality, you becoming a brand, that you will show up and you will engage and create content, and you will even do it when people disagree with your content. I think there's some value there. So yeah, you don't always have to be smiles and be politically correct, because I promise you, Bug don't be that way sometimes.
And it reinforces your point earlier about what's interesting, right? And it's also being authentic at the same time. Caroline, Sharief, do y'all have any social media interaction examples that you'd like to showcase?
Oh, I mean, whoa, we could just go through a fun little trip down my DMs, and that would be, we could keep us here all day. But there's an art, to Booger's point, there's an art to when you interact on social media, because the nature of what I do, I'm a talk show host, and I want it to feel like I'm not talking at you, that I'm pulling up a chair for you to join in on our conversation, that you are somebody that's just, joining a conversation amongst friends. So I need to be accessible, and I want people to feel like they can interact with me on social media, because then it feels like they can interact with me on my show. So I can't just ignore every single tweet that comes my way. But one of the best pieces of advice that somebody ever gave me as it comes, with social media, make a list, whether it's physically or mentally, whatever it is, whatever works for you. Make a list of people whose opinions you care about. people who genuinely care about your well-being. And for me, that's my producers, that's my co-hosts, that's people in this room, my mentors, my former professors, people whose opinions I care about. If you're not on that list, if, Bama fan Bobby1234, who doesn't have a profile picture on Twitter, tells me that I don't belong in this role, well, he's not on my list. So whatever he says to me, whatever his opinions are, they don't matter to me and they can't hurt me. And that's hard some days. Like, there are some days you don't feel like getting out of bed. You don't want to work a 14-hour day, but you have to because that's your job. And then somebody comes at you with just a mean tweet or a wild accusation or opinion, and it's the last thing that you want to hear. So it's something that you constantly have to practice, and it's something that you always have to remind yourself that you're accessible and you're vulnerable to everyone in America whenever you put your work out on social media or on a website or YouTube or whatever it might be. But constantly putting your work out there and making yourself vulnerable is part of the business. But always refer back to that list and the people whose opinions matter to you.
Very good. Thank you very much.
I tweet way too much. I tweet obnoxiously too much, especially during Saints and LSU games. I have some crazy hot takes, and sometimes, that's just me. I'm a very opinionated person. I say some things that are off the wall. Like a few weeks ago, I said, I think it was before the Saints played the Falcons, I said, hey, Drew Brees a few years ago threw 4 touchdown passes to 4 different undrafted free agents. Derek Carr can do the same thing in Atlanta. He has a little bit more weapons, and this fan base went crazy. They're, you idiot, dumbass, all these things. Can I curse in here? I'm sorry. They were saying all kind of things about me. I hear a lot more worse things on Twitter. At times it gets aggravating, and I fire back. At times, like, I've gotten better over the years as I've gotten older, and I'm just like, you know what? Forget this. I'm firing back. I'm like, why can't Derek Carr do it? He had a good game, and they lost, but he had a decent game, not the greatest game. But I'm just always, like, trying to pay attention to, like, who I'm talking to. Like Caroline says, you got to make a list of people who matter, but sometimes you're human. You're building your fan base. You're building, dialogue. You're building discussion. It's a whole, it's a different world out there with social media going on. Younger Sharief would pop off to everybody and go back and forth because it builds interaction. Older me, I'm just, every once in a while, I'm going to get into it. If I'm feeling very bored, if I have nothing else to do, then the interactions will start. But it's been a solid month since I've gone to war for Derek Carr. It hasn't worked out. They've lost 5 straight games, but I'm not scared to talk to people. But I pick and choose my times. That's just the nature of the beast now in 2024. Social media is alive, and I'm more than happy to talk to people on Twitter, especially if I know you. I'm not scared to bark back. The insults can get kind of crazy, and I'm not really going after the people who are really deep insults and get super crazy, but it is what it is. I might pop back every once in a while.
You always know where Sharief stands on things.
Oh, I am hot take, very opinionated. That's why, I always encourage people, have fun, be opinionated. You have to be factual too. Don't go over the crazy line like some people can do on social media.
Speaking of these modern times and all of the great resources that we have, but with that and with technology comes some gray areas, some concerning attributes like AI, artificial intelligence, and different companies utilizing AI in different capacities. Open question to the group. Have they been able to embrace it to an extent? Are we trying to shy away from it completely? Or do you see productive professional uses for AI within your industry? Tyler, you want to chime in?
Oh, the dreaded AI question.
Oh yeah, no. I was just reveling in, as some of you know, I'm not a Saints fan, so I was
hater.
I enjoy that. Go Birds.
Boo.
Yeah. I think we've seen AI. Gannett, I think it was last year where they got kind of dinged for like putting together AI generated articles that are not just weren't factual. I think that there's an avenue for it, and The Athletic really hasn't touched on this, and I don't think I'm sure conversations are being had, but I don't think it's anything that's in the cards like anytime soon. But if you're kind of looking at, the example I've used is like Texas high school football, where there's such a vast audience for every level of interest, 6A, 5A, 4A, even the smaller schools, that potentially I could see there being a benefit to some sort of AI generated something that is putting together 4 graphs on every single game in the state. But having reporters in those places to tell the human interest stories, analyze opinion, news, like to kind of complement the nuts and bolts, so to speak. I had this conversation with someone recently, and like I think maybe there's a way for that to happen where you're not sacrificing actual human jobs, but it's an information sharing tool, but having the people who are still kind of able to provide the context and stuff. I think that there's like potentially a benefit there, but just to like, you can't have AI write like 1,000-word human interest type story about, a player, like, but it's tricky. And I mean, I don't think I'm not saying that what I'm saying is like the right answer, but again, this is actually a conversation I had with a colleague recently, like, as we were talking about earlier, like it's still learning, we're still evolving. We don't know everything about AI, as much like social media and how we're always kind of learning. So like by next year's Sports Summit, we could have like a completely different answer. But if anybody has,
Very good.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Kennedi,
Thanks for putting me on the spot,
your
Chad.
thoughts as well. I mean, just with MLB.com, we've already referenced how many baseball games are out there, the need for coverage. Are there discussions being held in reference to AI?
No, honestly, not at all around MLB.com. Again, we have 30 beat reporters. We have backup beat reporters in almost all 30 cities, especially the markets with 2 teams. And I think we really do value sending a person to all 162 games on every MLB.com website. So even having AI for, like I said, those 2-to-1 games where you have to find something to write about, there's obviously still value in having beat reporters with boots on the ground, in the dirt, in the clubhouse to experience what's happening, talk to the players, talk to the coaches, and all of those things that I think obviously AI cannot do at this point. I don't know where it's going in the future, but you can't really replicate that same way of having a real post-game story come out of every game, and adding that personal flair to what may be a boring game, but finding specific things to focus on in all 162.
Thank you very much. Did you have a thought, Caroline?
Yeah, and as great of a tool AI can be and is, especially when you're wearing so many different hats, you also have to have a much better bullshit detector. Like if Sharief's gonna cuss, then I can too.
It's okay, you're an adult. These are all adults, so you can curse.
Like there's so many things that are going out on social media that are AI generated. I remember a clip from last football season, and there was a clip of Dabo Swinney just ripping on the Iowa offensive coordinator. And I'm thinking, what in the world is he thinking? It was an AI generated clip. It can be so easy when you want to be the first to the story and you're constantly commenting on things. It can be really easy to gig on. And I have fallen victim to it before. Fake Twitter accounts, fake photos, AI generated videos. So just always have that in the back of your mind of so many things on social media can be fake and can be AI generated. So just have a good bullshit detector is the best advice I could give you.
And Booger, do y'all have some of these conversations with some of the production staff at ESPN?
Not really. I think that's the one thing that really hasn't, when you start forward thinking and talking about the artificial intelligence, it's still pretty new, especially when it comes to television. I think if you can be creative, that's a new avenue that really hasn't been driven down at our company. I'm sure people behind the scenes may talk about it, but based on the technology and the things that we have right now, we're not diving too deep into it. I think where we see most of it now is in our sports leagues. I think there's going to be a lot of new ways to create things for these sports teams with artificial intelligence, because basically what it is, anytime you can create a picture or video of something that hasn't happened or something that hasn't happened that you want to happen, I think that can lead to an entirely different avenue or entirely different lane where you can kind of create, hey, I don't know, I'm just making this up. If the Saints were to trade for X, here's what he would look like in this offense. And now you got to create that, and you actually got to go and put that in. It's way above my head how to do it, but I think there's some different ways where you can actually create new content and create content based on artificial intelligence. But as for right now, we haven't dove deep into that yet.
Oh, very good. I know Mr. McFarland has a little bit more time with us, so I do want to open it up to questions at this point. If you do have a question in the crowd, in the audience, please let us know. Just raise a hand, and we'll also continue with our panel as well. Ms. Frida, in the middle, please go ahead. This might help a little bit.
Hello, world. Okay, I teach here. I'm teaching beginning and intermediate classes. So the biggest question that I see from students, and I'm going to have two parts of this, is they want to know how to get in touch with professionals. They want to know how to get jobs. They want to know very early on. One of the things I'm seeing is they're not focusing on what they need to do right now to improve their skill sets. So the second part of the question is, as a teacher, we have here each semester about 28 days usually of classes, depending on hurricanes and holidays. It seems like we have more hurricane off days. We have 28 days to try and teach the basic beginning skills to this beginning class before they even apply to the Manship School. And they need to be fairly proficient. They need to be able to do them, to write, to spell. The thing that I worry about is they don't read enough about what's going on in the world. I'm looking around the room. They don't read enough about what's going on in the world. They don't watch enough news. They don't keep up enough with what their profession is going to be. They keep up with stuff here, but they don't keep up enough with what the profession is going to be. The second part is now doing all those things, trying to, I can lead them into the trough. Will they drink the water? I don't know. The other part is, what skills are the teachers not teaching? What are we not, when you see new graduates come into the workplace, what do you see missing? Or what do you see that they didn't get when they went around these 4 years? Because I'm starting to worry that 28 days is not enough. How do we do this? So.
Frida wants more classes for y'all. More classes. Sharief, do you want to go ahead and weigh in?
Read more.
TV, I'll answer your second question first.
Okay.
I think what Chad was telling me before this entire panel started is that there are more sports classes now than Chad and I have ever.
When we were students.
We didn't have any sports classes, and I'm happy that's happening. They need to be in front of the camera more, Tiger TV, if they're on TV. Cindy, they need to write more. They 100%, you're correct. They must know everything that's going on outside of the LSU bubble. I know they pay attention to social media, and that should be good enough, but you have to pay attention to your surroundings nationally, locally. Connections, connections, connections. You have to always talk to people. And don't make the same mistake I made. You better get some internships, not ship. Multiple internships while you're still in school. The more people you know, the better chance you'll have of getting a job. But I promise you, that is going to work out the best. You have to 100% get reps, write, be in front of the camera. Don't be afraid to screw up. You're supposed to screw up. Be nervous. If you're nervous, that means you care. You better get those internships, though, and you better constantly repetition, writing, reading, everything. Be in front of that camera as many times as you possibly can. Stand-ups, reading the prompter, everything. You have to do it all. You have to get to those repetitions.
Very good.
To Sharief's point, the first internship I had out of college was because I met someone on a panel like this in this room. We talked afterwards. I ended up working there the following summer, and then 7 years later, I ended up moving back to Pittsburgh because he remembered me. I didn't burn any bridges in the internship, and I lived there for 9 years, and it was because we made a connection on a panel like this. So what he said is absolutely right. The other thing is, we talked a lot about personality and standing out earlier. I think a lot of times when I see younger news editors and writers coming into the business, they sort of jump straight to the personality and standing out, and they forget the basics. Like I've seen news writers write news headlines, and then I go back to them and say, hey, this was really good. Who won the game? Like, you didn't say who won. Like, you just kind of you know, the way that the ball came, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, great. That was very good writing. Who won? You didn't tell me. And so I think having that foundation of the basics before you kind of automatically jump to like because I mean, I don't know how many Reveille writers are in here, but like everybody wanted to be a columnist. And it's like, yeah, that's great. You want to have a voice, but you got to learn the ABCs of the writing before you kind of jump to that point. And the other thing is the versatility. Like I know all of us are interested in sports. The supply and demand for sports jobs when you come out of college is not, you know, they don't line up. So I think having the basics of not only what you're doing, but also the versatility of being willing to do news, do, you know, politics or whatever. My first job out of college was in Homa, and it was a copy editing job because there were no sports jobs available to write. And it was kind of a decision of, okay, do I want to get my foot in the door and have a job, or do I want to try to, you know, freelance for a couple publications to make a couple bucks here and there and stick with the sports writing? And you have to be willing to potentially pivot if need be. So those are all, you know, things.
No, thank you for sharing. And I know, Booger, you're a little bit short on time, but definitely want to get your thoughts on this matter. What have you seen with young professionals and either interns that are working with you all with the company and different experiences? What do you think they can benefit from before they enter the workplace?
Well, just to echo what's been said, just getting more comfortable, getting more reps, being involved more. The more you can do, the more you know how to do, the more you're willing to do. I think all of those things are going to give you an upper hand. And then on top of that, realize this, is that early on in your career, it's not about how much money you make. Early on in your career, it's about showing what you can do and what you're willing to do. And I think that's something I learned. You know, the very first thing I ever did in broadcasting was a radio show where I was a weekly guest, and it was just fun for me. I did it for 15 minutes, and I didn't get paid. I would come on, and I gave 15 minutes of my time, which led me to meet and become friends with the host, who down the road allowed me to do a player show, which I did get paid for, which when CBS started the afternoon radio station in Tampa, the guy who was producing that show was the one who called me. It's like, hey, I remember, you know, you were actually doing the show. We thought you were pretty good. Here's what we're starting. We think you'd be good for it. Would you like to audition? So my entire career got started based on something that I did for free. And I think, you know, rare is the case where you come out and you're going to, hey, we want you to be the anchor, or we want you to be that. Rare is that case going to happen. So just be comfortable understanding what you can do, and the more you can do and the more you're willing to do, and be willing to do those things without expecting anything in return.
Well said. And Booger, if you have to peel out, please do. We just want to say thank you very much for your time here today. We appreciate you, sir.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I definitely appreciate being here. You know, the thing I'll say is you guys are so much further along than I was. I didn't think about broadcasting. I didn't think about these things until I got done playing professional football. And I think people often look at the life of an athlete and they say it's a glamorous life. Well, I look at it a different way. I got done playing professional football at the age of 30, and I was 10 years behind because the people that graduated with me at 21 from LSU had already started their career and had already started doing the things that they could do for the next 20, 30, 40 years. I was behind. So I was a 30-year-old, essentially a 30-year-old guy out of college looking for a job. And I think that you guys are so much further along. The level of teaching and the level of understanding that you're getting at LSU is second to none. Take advantage of it, understand it, use it, be creative. And anything I can ever do for each and every one of you, I'm a willing participant. I'm an easy find. SEC Booger on Instagram, ESPN Booger on Twitter. I do respond, as I've said, so don't say nothing crazy or you're going to get a clap back. But as always, I appreciate you, Chad, and always go Tigers.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Booger McFarland. We appreciate you. Let's take a few more questions from the audience. Yes, ma'am. We have a hand up over here. Jada, thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Jada Ferris. I'm a junior. I guess my question is, when you're in internships and they're kind of like not really doing anything with you, like you feel like you're just coming in every day and they're not using you in any way, and then you advocate for yourself and get pushback, how do you like keep going and like keep advocating for yourself? when like nobody in the room is really willing to help you except a couple people?
Caroline?
I would say find a place where you feel like you are being pushed and you get experience. I'm not telling you to quit your job today, but I would say that there are so many opportunities out there and so many people that would be more than willing to give you those opportunities that you're advocating for yourself for. I say also, while you're in the position that you're in, keep going, keep pushing. Ride the line between persistence and obsession, because there is nobody in any room that is going to advocate for yourself more than you are going to. So keep going, bug them, annoy them, and you will eventually get those opportunities. And at some point, you're gonna look back and say, if I didn't keep pushing for this, I wouldn't have gotten this opportunity that led me to so many more open doors. So just keep going.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
I think one thing to remember is like that sounds like it's more of a problem with whoever you're working for than you. And I know that can probably get you down. I think just having the mental wherewithal of like, this is not a me issue. Like, don't let that dictate kind of how you feel on a personal level. And I think also going back to the village stuff we talked about earlier, leaning on that village that hopefully you're already cultivating of how are you doing in your internship? Did you run into this problem? How did you navigate it? Because a lot of your colleagues and friends are in similar positions. So like being able to kind of lean on them to, help you get through whatever you need to get through, I think is important. And it's nice to put a face to the email, by the way.
We encourage networking and connecting and reaching out. Thank you, Jada. A few other questions, y'all? Mr. Adam up front, or do we have one in the back? See if we get Mary Lee, if you can bring it up front.
Uh-oh. Adam.
Go ahead, Mr. Adam.
Thank you. So I guess kind of my question is for the New Orleans folks. I'm sure y'all have heard from Dennis Allen countless times. I thought we did some things well, and yet there's still some things that we need to clean up. When that's what you're getting from coaches, players, I guess part of the answer is to the point earlier about going the extra step and contacting, a former player, whatever it might be. How do you kind of see through, I guess, the coach speak, and maybe what are the challenges of that, and also some advice of creating compelling content when all you're receiving is, yeah, I thought we did pretty well, but we could do some things better?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think a lot of coaches are like that. Obviously, they want to be honest but positive about their team. And I think what, at least we've tried to do, is obviously show what Dennis Allen is saying, but also show what's going on the field. I'm not going to tell a coach that he's wrong, and kind of say that I'm the expert on the situation, but all I can do is say, hey, here's what Dennis Allen said about this. Here's what's going on the field. Here's the stats. Here's kind of, also too, it's just kind of being honest with the audience, and just kind of giving them the full context of the situation. And, too, that's not always just saying like, Dennis Allen's wrong about this because here, it's truly just saying, hey, here's what's going on in the field. Here's what Dennis Allen had to say about it. And you kind of let the audience decide or kind of see what, they take from that. So, Sharief, do you have a better answer for that?
Oh, I know everybody wants to hear me hot take. I don't blame it all on Dennis Allen, by the way. It comes down to some of the players, and they're a good source to talk to after Dennis says something like that. You hear Dennis say, it's not good enough, and then you go to Alvin Kamara and you ask him about, man, why in the hell are all the fans leaving, after the halftime? And he's like, if we were playing that way and I was sitting in the stands, I would leave too. He's honest. And you go to the captains like Cam Jordan, they're honest. This isn't good enough. This is embarrassing. You hear those words, embarrassing, not good enough. I would leave too. You just go to the team captains who've been there long enough, that have been to the good and the bad, and you're going to get your honest answers, different than coach speak, because those are the guys who are on the field playing, and they can see what went wrong in that play, what is going wrong during a 5-game losing streak. So I always like to hear from the players more than the coaches, because sometimes coaches really do have to review the video, even though it's the most cliche, boring thing you've ever got to hear from out of their mouths, and you don't want to hear it after a game. But mostly the players, they're going to give you exactly what's happening and what's not happening on the field. And this locker room is very honest. I think most of the players are nice enough to even answer the questions after a bad loss. So I'm more of a players guy to hear from players about good and bad things.
I think not only from the Saints, but just if you're working in a locker room or a group like that, like the coach obviously talks, the players obviously talk, but when you're going somewhere, and I'm sure this is true in a clubhouse too, the people that know as much as anything are the trainers, the equipment managers, the people who are just absorbing everything. And now obviously you can't just go and run with what they say to you, but building those relationships will lead you into potentially knowing, okay, what Alan is saying here is probably true because I've talked to this equipment manager and this trainer and these, the people who refill the water bottles and all this stuff, and they're kind of telling me the same things. It helps inform you about what you're presenting to your audience because you kind of know that some of that has been verified or kind of proven false in a way, you know what I mean? So those relationships, I think, on background, off the record, I think help what you present to your audience, and those are just as important as going up and trying to talk to a player or a coach, whether you're TV, podcast, writer, or whatever. So
we've got just a few more minutes, y'all. So is there a final question?
What's that?
You're an Eagles fan or a Falcons fan?
Eagles.
Oh, all right.
Let's go ahead and
least
we'll
they've
try to
won.
work in both questions real quick. And I also want, before we go, your favorite manship moment. So think about that. Flashing back. Yes,
I don't
sir.
know if we
Can
can
get me in trouble.
we can talk about that here.
Go ahead, sir.
Hi, Julian Zona. How do you guys define success within your current jobs, and is there any pieces of content that you guys produce that make you feel proud to be a part of the industry?
Question. How do you define success, y'all?
Oh, boy.
Sometimes it's making it through the day.
Yeah.
We talked about baseball's a long season. Yeah. I go to Arizona for 6 weeks starting in February, and then I'm there for 6 weeks, and then it's 162 games from April to the end of September. So I think sometimes success is getting through the day, writing a couple of stories, and being able to go home and lay down. Not to sound a bit morbid there, but that's what it is. And I think I had a producer a couple months ago. I sent her my story, and I was like, I just don't think this is my best today. And she was like, you don't have to hit a home run every day, Kennedi. Sometimes you just got to get on base and hit a single. And I think that's success because if you get on base, that's enough.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's all you need. And for me personally, that's what I have to tell myself sometimes when you're working 12, 13, 14 days straight. Hey, I got through the day. We can do better tomorrow. You can always do better tomorrow. Yeah. And I think that's a lot of success for me personally when I can do that.
And I think too, it's gonna sound so cliche, but if you're happy and you're passionate about what you do, I think that's success. There's so many people who go to their job and they just had to choose that job because it pays the bills, and so they 9 to 5. If you truly look forward to going to work and are passionate about it and know you have a purpose in the industry, I think that's success to me. And I just think sports is such a fun job. I mean, people, watch it, and the athletes that we get to cover on a daily basis, people just dream of meeting for 10 seconds. And so sometimes I have to take a step back too and just realize what a privilege it is to do this job. And I always, whether I'm covering a championship or interviewing an athlete one-on-one, whatever, sometimes I just have to remember where my feet are and just be thankful for that, because we get so many cool opportunities and moments in our job. And so if you just if you notice yourself truly being happy, passionate about what you're doing, and just having fun with it, I think that's success in this industry. So
I think you're going to be really unhappy if the only definition of success for you is the end goal.
Yeah.
Because I think that when I was in your position, I only viewed success if I am the sideline reporter for the Super Bowl. And that's a really unrealistic expectation, and it's going to be a really long and really rough career if that's the only way that I view success. And I think that's something that you learn throughout your career. I think Madeline said it great, be where your feet are. And my definition of success every day is did I make someone feel something today? Did I make someone smarter? Did I make someone think about a story in a different way? Did I make them laugh? Did I piss them off a little bit? That's okay too. Like, did I make some sort of impact for a sports fan? Did I do something for someone to make them feel something today? And that's really, at the end of the day, all that we can do as media members.
Yeah.
I'll be quick. Just whenever someone says, and they see me out somewhere, we enjoy what you do, Sharief. It's all I need to hear. Don't care that I've never won an Emmy. I've been screwed so many times out of an Emmy. But just, we enjoy what you do. That's all that matters to me. I don't care if I'm hard on myself. I don't care if I felt like I was a bad show or bad report. People come up to me, we enjoy what you do. All I ever need.
Thank y'all very much. Can we try to get your question in really quick? Yes, ma'am.
I know that like has many people make their way through the industry. For those that's like currently in it or just making their way like for future contents, when they have opportunities or like doors that's closing on them, what advice will you give to them when they find themselves inside that pit? And will you tell them to like revert back to the basic and to like write stories and keep going forward? Or is there like any other advice besides that? And also like what like advice or motto will you keep or give to them to keep in the back of their minds while they go through this?
When certain doors close and other opportunities may be presented? What do y'all think?
I would say take any opportunity that comes your way. If there's a certain opportunity that you envision for yourself and that's, the path that you want to go down, but it's not an opportunity for you right now, try something else. Like, another door is going to open. I think one lesson that I learned throughout my career so far is that there's not one path, that there's not just one cookie cutter way to get where you want to go, that I've taken several different detours in my career that I never expected that I would have taken, but they were opportunities that were afforded to me, and I learned something new, and I was able to refine my skills in different areas, and it just makes you a more well-rounded person. So I would say if there's an opportunity that's not there for you right now, try a different one, and you might realize that that's actually the path that you should have taken in the first place.
Being versatile, being able to adapt.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's quickly get your favorite Manship moment. Madeline, when you were a student here.
There's so many. Obviously, like, some of my best friends I made at Manship, so there's just so many memories. But I think what stands out the most and something I still use to this day in my job is we actually got to sit down with Tom Rinaldi. Does everybody know who that is? Yeah, he's incredible. He works for Fox now. Fox Sports, and he sat down with us when he was with College Game Day at the time, and he just spoke to us and gave us so many tips and pointers. But I think the biggest one that I took away, and I use it in almost every feature story, is low point, turning point, high point. And that has just like changed how I write stories. So what was the low point of this person's story? What was the turning point? What changed things for them? And then now, like, where are they at now? What's the high point for them now? And I use that in every single feature story, and it's helped me so much. So just being able to sit down with professionals, people like that who are at the top of their industry, those were some of my favorite moments outside of all the moments I made late nights in Hodges Hall with my best friends. So.
And that's a similar theme for most everyone. Tyler?
Mine is nowhere near as poignant as that. But speaking of best friends from Hodges Hall, my best friend to this day, Jared Roser, is still somebody I met in the basement. And when he was sports editor and I was managing editor, we came up with a headline for a basketball story that was Chris's LSU officially grabs Stanford's Johnson.
Nice.
It was when LSU hired Trent Johnson.
Good job, Chris.
And it went... I know, it was me, for sure. And I remember when I applied to be editor-in-chief for the Reveille, I got peppered with questions about that headline, and I became editor because my answer was that I asked everybody, I was like, was the headline accurate? And they all said, well, yeah, it was an accurate headline. I was like, you won't have a problem with accuracy if I'm the editor. Like, we're in college. We had a little fun, but that's an accurate headline. It's an accurate story, and that's going to be my goal. Accuracy is key. And I became editor. Now, I don't know how I had the chutzpah to do that when I was 21, but that headline stands out because it's funny. It's still funny, but it's true.
We used big kick energy when Cole Tracy hit the game winner against
We're in college.
Auburn. So I think my favorite Manship memory is just the entire 2019 season, the national championship, Joe Burrow winning the Heisman. all of that was when I was sports editor at the Reveille, and I think that was an invaluable experience as a college student to be able to cover that national championship. People go their whole careers without covering a championship, and just to be able to do that when we were in college, we were, 18, 19, 20, 21, whatever we were, it was phenomenal. Obviously, Joe Burrow, just the second Heisman winner in school history. It was so much fun, and just, being on the field after that game it's invaluable what we got to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Caroline?
Lucky. I think my favorite memory was actually with Kennedi. We covered the LSU Fiesta Bowl in Phoenix, and we did probably everything wrong. We stayed like 45 minutes away from where all of the media things were. I know I shot a press conference and everything was blue. We did so many things wrong, but we learned from them, and we were actually talking about this last night.
We should not have done that.
We should not have done any of the things that we did, but learned from it. And also, I remember just standing there looking around. I was shooting a stand-up on the field next to people at ESPN, next to people in local media markets. And I'm a student at this time. I'm 20 years old. And it was a reminder of how many opportunities are afforded to you at the Manship School that I got to be a professional. Yeah. I wasn't student media, I was a media member. And it's great to put on your reel, it's great to put on your resume, it's great experience, and I got that before I graduated, and I also learned to maybe look at the map of a city. But it was
This is an insane city.
It's so big, and we didn't even think about that, but learned. Yeah. We learned.
And Mr. Ishaq, would you like to wrap
Close
us up?
it out? All right. I don't even know anyone was alive in 2003 that's in this audience.
A young Nick Saban.
A young Nick Saban. We're going with this, covering that national championship in the Superdome, the Sugar Bowl. Marcus Spears, the interception, Justin Vincent, and the punt by Donnie Jones to end the game. That was awesome to cover. That was my favorite memory in terms of covering sports. And, of course, bunny hopping across the stage to get my diploma.
There you go.
That's my last time here.
Manship moments, Manship proud, y'all. Our alums are doing amazing things. Let's give them a giant round of applause.
All right, Caroline.
This is for you.
Our panelists are going to stick around for a little bit. They're also going to go visit student media. Shout out to Tiger TV, KLSU, the Reveille as well. We appreciate you and your support. We do have another exciting panel coming up at 11 o'clock focusing on NIL. Please join us as well. Thank y'all very much.
I don't think I would.
I'm with one.
I think you did it.
That was great.
You killed it.
Y'all were awesome.
Hell yeah.
But she's precious.